What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of On Q. I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Don't forget, check us out on the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q, Twitter, and IG, or as we like to call it, X now. I guess that's the appropriate term. But nonetheless, NBA season starting to heat up. Obviously, we are right around the midway point. We got the trade deadline in the association. Our guy, Johnathan Marshall, does an outstanding job covering hoops. Of course, a sports reporter and anchor, WMUR, kind enough to join us for a couple moments. And Johnathan, always good to talk a little hoops and association with you, brother.
I know. What's going on, Q?
Well, I'll tell you, we're getting to this point right now where I'm not getting too high yet with my Knicks all of a sudden making a run, third seed, I think 8 straight, 7 straight, 8 of 9, 9 of 10. They've been on a roll. I still look at this Eastern Conference, man, and, Milwaukee, the Boston Celtics, Cleveland's hoping to be at full strength if they get Garland back. So there are teams that I'm not getting too high, but I'm just going to stay even keel. But I do love what I'm seeing from the Knicks because not only are they playing both ends of the floor, obviously we know about the guard play. We know about what Brunson's able to do, but then you get the kid DiVincenzo last night, 33, 9 3-pointers. I mean, you get that type of out of nowhere production. Right now, they're kind of going deep into the tool chest, if you will. And I like what I'm seeing with this team. I don't want to get, as I alluded to, too high because I need to see this come springtime.
Yeah. Nah, you know what? Actually, I have no smart remarks about this Knicks team. I don't. Like, this is actually a well put together basketball team. I love how hard they play. I love the addition of OG, what he brings, sort of like that connector between Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, who's out now with an injury. So we'll have to follow that. That'll be a major, loss. I just imagine this team with the healthy Mitchell Robinson, how much formidable would they be? And so I think, honestly, when it comes to Eastern Conference playoffs, I think matchups are everything. Can the Knicks make a deep run in the playoffs? Of course they can, right? But it also comes down to matchups, right? If you have to play a Cleveland Cavaliers team, which you guys took care of last year, but the Cavs are playing better now, that would be an interesting series, right? And so to me, I think their ceiling could be obviously a second round, possibly. We'll see what that second round matchup would be. Can you beat a Boston Celtics in the second round or a Bucks team? I wouldn't go that far just yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think what they have right now is good enough to make a second round appearance. But this so far so good. But I have to see more. If Julius Randle gets back, he's a key come playoff time. Can you rely on him to be that secondary playmaker and scoring option besides Jalen Brunson? That's always going to be the key for me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as much as I've criticized Rand over the years, he's averaging 24, it's a double-double, 24 and 10. He's shooting about 47% from the floor. We know those are high percentage shots right around the basket. He'll be out, as you alluded to, a couple weeks with that shoulder injury. The Boston Celtics are still Boston, but I am curious to get your thoughts on Milwaukee because it's very rare that you have a team that's running roughshod through a conference early on in the season, and then they decide to fire their head coach and bring in a guy who, let's be honest, we know about his track record. We're all too familiar with Doc Rivers' track record. And I kind of joked on X, hey, let me know what happens when they blow a 3-1 leader to get bounced in the second round. I mean, how shocked were you that they made this coaching change? I think they were 31 and 13 at the time.
Yeah, number 2 in the Eastern Conference, doing pretty well. But if you caught the clips of what's going on in Milwaukee, Giannis having his interaction with Adrian Griffin, right? That didn't seem to spell out a respectful relationship, right? Or a relationship that was positive, right? The result of them firing Adrian Griffin doesn't come as a shock. It comes as a shock because they're doing so well. But at the end of the day, if your best player being Giannis and your second best player, Dame, if they're not really feeling what's going on, you got to make a decision. You got to make a move, right?
Well, they looked also defensively, right? I mean, you looked at the stats from last year where they were efficiency-wise, but not to cut you off, but this is the NBA. Nobody plays defense.
Right. You trade away Jrue Holiday for a guy in Dame, what do you expect to happen? Chris Middleton at this point, he can't move. You have Brook Lopez is a great rim protector. You got Giannis, who is still Giannis, but at the end of the day, you look at the personnel, what are you expecting? Like these guys aren't locking down anybody. So for me, it's more of a personnel situation more so than a coaching situation. Now, when it comes to the coaching situation, they just didn't like Adrian Griffin from my vantage point. That's what it comes down to me. It's funny because there were reports that Giannis didn't want Nick Nurse, thankfully, because the Sixers got the benefit of that. Nick Nurse is definitely an upgrade over Adrian Griffin, but
Yep.
Giannis didn't want Nick Nurse. I don't know what that's about, but okay, you don't want a Nick Nurse who would obviously make your team better. He has a history. He's won a championship. He's coached a superstar in Kawhi Leonard. So he has a history there, but you don't want him. So to me, whatever happens, Doc Rivers, I don't care who's coaching this team. If the Bucks fail to make the championship, we're looking at Giannis and Dame. That's what it all comes down to. You got to figure this out, how to play with each other and how to figure this out defensively, because you can have all the schemes you want, but if you're not buying in, if you're not doing your part, it doesn't matter. And Doc Rivers is the last guy that I want to come fix an issue.
Well, yeah, especially when you're talking about defensive side of the floor. And to your point, I mean, guard play, listen, when you're bringing in a scorer who's not going to play defense, then obviously you're at a disadvantage. And that's exactly what they've done. I mean,
Yeah.
I've watched enough of them to know that the guards, their opposition, the guards can penetrate. They can go right to the basket at times uncontested. That's not going to be good when you say take on a team like the Boston Celtics and they're, 1-2 punch of Brown and Tatum. How about the Philadelphia 76ers? So look, we know they hit a little, rough patch. We get it. Embiid looks like he might be out again, knee issues. And here's the other caveat, right? If you took a flyer on Embiid for all-star, all NBA, all-team defensive or MVP, if he misses 5 more games, he's not going to qualify to win those regular season awards. I mean, think about that because of the new rules that were implemented. But I'm curious, got to go back. The game the other night, Denver 111, Philadelphia 105, no Embiid again.
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation, right? I feel like we have the same conversation about
But
Embiid and this
what do you
team
make
every
of that?
year.
It's his 4th time sitting out now in Denver. And don't tell me it's about the smoking and joking in the friggin' mountain air.
At this point, it's a trend, right? Like if it's a one-off, okay, but this is a trend that seems to be, going a certain way. I don't understand what the issue is. He played last night, obviously, right? Golden State, and we see the end result of that, right? And so the Denver thing with Joel Embiid, it's very interesting, right? Because the whole debate is Jokic versus
Yep.
Embiid, the MVP debate. So you would think a guy would want to get up for that and want to play, especially in that home crowd in Denver, and so it's very interesting, and it's a trend to me. You got to go with the trend. It is what it
Is
is.
he scared to play?
Is he scared to play against Jokic specifically?
Well, I mean,
Or is
well,
he
I mean,
scared to play? Or is he scared to play in Denver in that altitude?
I don't want to hear that nonsense. This is not 84 Denver Nuggets and, Dan this on whatnot. Come on, stop. Fat lever.
It's
I don't want to hear that nonsense.
it's the conversation with Embiid, especially today. It's all over the place, right? Because it's like they're calling out the Denver fans and media and fans who are criticizing Joel. Like, okay, we see what happens. He's playing now. Now look at him. He's hurt now. I understand that part of it, but on the flip side of it, this is an organizational failure last night, right? For not being able to manage your star, right? If he wants to play so bad, and you know how serious this knee issue is, you have the final say into not letting him play. And once again, we talked about this organization. Even before Nick Nurse has been here, this organization has made mishap
Well,
after
from medical
mishap
standpoint,
and every step of the
diagnosis. Yep.
way.
Yep.
Every step of the way. And so the fact that Embiid was on the ground last night in pain
Yep.
is
Fourth
not a
quarter.
shock. You look at this is an organizational failure. And Joel look, he's not absolved of blaming this. Like, it's unfortunate that he got hurt. But at the end of the day, if they're saying he's feeling pressure about playing, but this is your career, this is your body. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
you got at a certain point.
Go back to what I just said, because
Yeah.
Draymond Green basically is claiming exactly what I brought up. You think it's the fact where I have to get 65 games in to potentially qualify for an MVP award. So I have to put myself out there.
Right. If that's at this point for Joel Embiid, for me, the MVP doesn't matter. I mean, like that shouldn't be your motivation to get on the court, right? If you're feeling pressure from this 65 game threshold, you got your MVP last year. What did it do for you? You know what I mean? And so that's where I'm looking at Joel Embiid inside. Is it really about winning the championship and going and preserving your body? Because we know how fragile your knees are at this point, right?
Yeah.
So what is it? And as an organization, what are you trying to do? Like, that's an it's just mishaps all around. That's the way I see it. And now
It's
they're in
hard.
a position where who knows? I mean, for me, I would sit him out for at least a month.
Wow.
I mean, did you see the play where he actually fell to the
I,
ground? I don't know. He was like jogging and he just fell.
yeah,
Like his knees
that's,
aren't good.
man, I'll tell you. So he, again, he collided
Mhm.
last night, but we've seen enough where he's awkwardly
He's
landed,
always on the ground.
always on the ground. He's a
Yeah.
big guy. He's a big man. He's a big player, always crashes to the floor. I don't really buy into too much of the, hey, he wants to play the 65, like Green said.
Mhm.
But to your point, I do believe it's also a stupid rule. But with that being
Mhm.
said, if you think get the break, all-star break, bleed into February, now we're in the March, now we're into the
Mhm.
springtime. I'd have to pull up, that latter part of their schedule, so to speak. But here's the problem. He was averaging 39, 40 points in the month of January. I mean,
Yeah.
he was as dominant as they come, not to mention the 70 points explosion, which was hilarious
Mhm.
because Luka turns around and scores 73 the following
All
night, which
right.
tells you there's no defense in the NBA,
Right.
whether Embiid scored against San Antonio or not. Um, but right now they're 29 and 17. You got Indiana,
Mhm.
you got Cleveland, you got the Knicks, you got Milwaukee, you got Boston, you got Miami, you got Orlando. So there's about between the Knicks and let's just say, hell, I'll even throw in Chicago. Well, you know what? Let Chicago get to 500. I'll throw in Orlando. That's a game over 500. You're talking 7 games, right? So 4 to 5, 6, 7 games separate those teams that are kind of bulked, if you will. Knicks are 3, Cleveland's 4. The Sixers would be the 5th seed right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you're really taking a risk here that you're going to have to rely on other players to step up. And as we
Mhm.
have seen, listen, a Reed getting 30 points is an aberration.
Mhm.
Harris is still Harris. Maxey has come into his own, but Maxey's not going to score 35, 36, 37
Mhm.
points. So if you're saying that, then there's no reason for me to believe that this team is
Mhm.
actually going to be a playoff team if he sits a month.
See how fickle the situation is with this franchise, though. Like not too long ago, well, they were sitting pretty at the top, right? It's behind Boston and Milwaukee. You were figuring, okay, this is the top three. You look
Yeah.
at it now, the Knicks are in that third spot. The Cavs are playing better, right? Even without Darius Garland, they're playing much better, right? And so, okay, let's say you play Embiid the next, however, I don't know. We haven't gotten the diagnosis. So he plays. His knee's not getting any better if he's playing through that, right? And so you're taking a chance come playoff time, first round, second round, then what? His knee is what, 50, 40%, right? And so either way, you gotta weigh the pros and cons of each situation. I would rather sit him out now and trust that the deadline's coming up too as well. Daryl Morey is under pressure. He has to make some type of move to figure. He has to figure it out because the roster as constructed, as we've seen without Embiid, especially, it's not good enough, right? And so you have to sit him out right now. You have to rest him come playoff time because that's what all it, he has to be ready come playoff time. That's at the end of the day, this franchise has to do everything in its power to make sure they're at their best come playoff time because none of this at the end of the day, the 70 points is great. But if he loses in the first round or the second round again, what's the conversation?
So you're saying go out and try to get another scorer, a guy that can score in
You have
bunches a little
to.
bit. You're going to
You
set,
have to.
you just want primarily the offense just to carry the load.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I mean,
But I don't know what's out, but it's the thing. Like, I don't know what's out there, right?
I would have loved
This team,
Siakam.
that would have been a great pickup. Look, is Laurie Markkinen available for the right price? Who knows? I know Danny Ainge will want a boatload of first round picks. I don't know if Darren Morey is willing to do that, but they're in a tough spot right now. I don't know what deal is out there as with this roster currently constructed with the injury to Joel Embiid that's going to propel you into that caliber of team that you need to be to compete with the Boston Celtics team. I just don't see it.
Always
If
something.
Joel's healthy, a backup point guard could be used, a reliable backup big could be used, a 3-and-D guy could be used. But now if you're missing a big slice of your scoring, how do you replace that?
There's always something with this franchise, man.
And it goes back to the conversation we have every year. You're only going to go as far as your best player can
Yep.
take you.
Yeah.
Joel Embiid's approaching 30. His knees are not good right now. You're taking your chances with it. You got to live
Um,
and die with whatever happens at this point.
So health aside, when you look at some of these veteran guys like Harden, Lillard, Embiid,
Mm,
Butler with Miami, I'm not
mm,
ready to say Tatum yet with Boston.
mm.
When you throw out some of those names, who who would you say has the most pressure out of those guys that I just thrown you? For health aside, let's say
Mm.
100% for argument's sake to win a title.
I wouldn't say Jimmy Butler, right? Because he's actually made it. He's made a finals run, right? We've
Sure.
seen him do it.
Yeah.
And all things being equal, Jimmy Butler would be great as a number 2 guy on the championship team, right? He would be perfect. I don't think we see him as that
He's
top.
not that guy anymore.
He's not
Yeah.
in the top 5 conversation, right? James Harden, to me, it is what it is. But the
I
fact that
know.
he plays with a Kawhi Leonard, I wouldn't put that pressure on James Harden right now. So now it comes down to Dame or Joel Embiid. Well, who is the guy who won the MVP? Who's the guy who was touted as a top 5 talent,
Yep.
right? Who is the guy, the number 1 option on the team? I would say Joel Embiid, who is the guy who just seemingly can't get away from the second round.
So
Like
this
Joel
is
Embiid, he has the pressure. Like it's gotten to a point to where I've seen people joke on Twitter like the Sixers are like the Cowboys of the NBA, and you can't really fight against that, right? You
yeah.
can't say anything because it's second round. You know what's going to happen. And Joel Embiid has been the constant. Doc Rivers is gone. Ben Simmons is gone. Joel Embiid is the last remaining.
So
Like,
can that also be one of the reasons? Like, I look at it twofold, right? I think
mm,
where there's smoke, there's fire a little bit. The fact that you
mm,
don't play Denver, you're afraid of getting eaten alive by arguably the best player in the game right now. 4 times you've missed that
mm,
trip, right? So now all
yeah,
of a sudden you're going to get all the criticism. You're the reigning MVP. You need to be on the floor. Here you go. Eat his lunch. Show us what you have. Score 70 against him, not against poor San Antonio, right? So there's these, I guess, speculation or reports or just, um, you know, people within the Sixers organization. Uh, I'm reading, I'm hearing, I'm
mm,
seeing that they believe Embiid forced himself to play through injuries because of the scrutiny he received by not making the trip to Denver. So if that's the case, then that's when the head coach or the GM have to say, no, you're not playing. Like we're sitting you. Because we know the NBA, the players run the league. Okay.
mm,
And it's a players' league. And if you disagree with the player, what happens? Boom,
mm.
you're out. I.e., look what's going on with Milwaukee or has gone on with Milwaukee. But again, do you believe that, you know, because he doesn't want to play against Joker in Denver and then he decides, okay, I'll play against Golden State, it's like, okay, um, the criticism got to him and he decided, I'm playing come hell or high water. And then it goes into your point. So you're kind of risking kind of like a Mickey Mouse MVP. I mean, look, hell, we see it in the NFL. Lamar Jackson is going to be an MVP. He lost in the
Yeah,
AFC Championship. MVP
yeah,
doesn't mean anything anymore. So
yeah,
is that kind of where you're going with this? And if that's the case, doesn't Nick Nurse have to turn around and be like, we're shutting you down?
yeah. Like, look, I start with the organization first. They have to be the ones to get out of. You have to save the player from themselves at a certain point, right? Because the player, they're going to be in their mind. They're going to be overthinking. And we know a lot of these players now are on social media. They see what the talk is, right? They see what the criticisms are. And no matter what they might say, no matter what Joel can say, I don't care about the MVP. I want to compete for a championship.
Yep.
Well, if that's the case, you would have sat out last night. You wouldn't risk your health,
That's a fair point.
right? That's just the bottom line. If you really didn't care about the criticisms of sitting out, if you really knew your knee wasn't right, and you're
Yeah.
trying to prepare yourself for the long haul. You know that your body has been fragile and has been able to withstand a long playoff run. You wouldn't risk a random Wednesday night game against the Warriors or
Right.
Tuesday night game, excuse me, against the Warriors. It's not worth it at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, and so I look at the front office, I look at the GM, I look at the coach, yes. But at the end of the day, Joel has to really understand who are you and what do you want?
And how much you mean to the franchise going forward.
Like, are you really going to get moved by social media, criticisms?
Yeah.
If you know deep down inside that you're not ducking anybody and you're really hurt and you need to sit out, then sit out.
Sit out. That's a fair point.
You know what I mean? And so for me, Joel has to take accountability for this as well. He's a grown man.
Well, ego is a
Exactly.
powerful thing, especially
And
when you, yeah.
and so second round again this year and your body isn't what it needs to be, who are we going to blame?
Well,
You can't blame social media.
no,
You can't blame the fans. You made
no,
this choice.
no. Can't blame the mountain air in Denver.
Oh
Western
yeah.
Conference, Minnesota, aforementioned Denver, OKC. You talked a little bit about them prior to the season. The Clippers, Sacramento, Phoenix. What am I missing here? Phoenix, Dallas, the Lakers, Utah. Like, I mean, it's kind of funny when you think about it. We knew Denver was going to be a good team. Sacramento, you mentioned. OKC was one of your dark horses as well. Dallas is hanging around. Pelicans hanging around. We know about the Pelicans. You just need Williamson on the floor and engage. We know that. But, Western Conference right now, biggest surprise to you?
Biggest surprise, whether good or bad. I'm not shocked at the top three, honestly. The Thunder, I was really high on the Thunder entering this year. The
Yes, you were.
Clippers, the way Kawhi is looking, that really doesn't shock me. That's why I buy into what the Clippers are doing because Kawhi is, when he's locked in, he's one of the best. I'm shocked that the Pelicans aren't in the top six right now. Looking at their roster, I'm a huge fan of Willie Green. I think he's an excellent young coach. They have the star power in Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, a perfect second option. CJ McCollum's a veteran. They have guys like a Dyson Daniels, a Herb Jones, a Trey Murphy, Jose Alvarado. Like they have the nice role players too that know their role and can contribute. And so I'm shocked that they haven't been able to find that next step, that next level. And so I'm concerned about that franchise. They got to have some hard conversations, I think, about Zion and Ingram coming up soon. If they fail to make the playoffs this year, you gotta have those conversations. Is Zion that guy to lead the franchise?
Well, to be fair, in all honesty, in the past, what's been the criticism for him, right? It's been just, I can't stay healthy on the floor. Now, I know he's questionable, I think, for their game, I think tonight, forgive me, I think they play the Rockets. He's got a left foot bone contusion, but, the kid's only 23 and
True.
he's putting up some numbers, right? I think maybe it's more frustration that if you're not 100% all the time, if you're off injured, obviously it's going to affect your production. As you mentioned, they got a substantial amount of role players. They got depth coming off the bench. Ingram, I've always liked Ingram. And the funny thing about Ingram is you think of Ingram, I think he's 25, 26. I feel like he's been in the league now for a decade. I mean, it's just that's the kid came in pretty young. Remember the Lakers, people were writing this kid off when they drafted him. So I think, listen, I think there'll be a playoff team. I don't believe they're going to be a serious threat coming out of the Western Conference. I don't think you give up just yet on that tandem because as we've seen in the NBA, Batman kind of needs a Robin. You have to have the 1-2 punch no matter what, right? You've got, Maxey and Embiid. We know about the Knicks, if you want to say Brunson and Randall. You mentioned Cleveland before. We know about Denver. We know about the teams have those 1-2 punches. I'm looking at teams that I believe with the trade deadline coming up, the Lakers, Golden State, Portland. I brought this up a while with you. Again, I'll throw it again. The Golden State, you got Thompson, you got Curry, you got veteran guys, the Lakers and LeBron. I mean, can you see a scenario where any of those players are moved?
Golden State should move those players. I think it's over. It's done.
Oh, I agree 100%.
It's fully cooked. Like the Golden State they're almost like a prisoner of their own success because when you have such a great run, you think about Golden State, Steph, Clay, and Dre. That's what it's been. Players have come and gone, KD, the Iguodala's, but it's been Steph, Clay, and Dre. Those are the main three guys. And so it's hard to separate from that when that's all you've known as an organization, as a fan base, and as players, right? I'm pretty sure Steph does not want to see Clay and Dre. I don't. That's all he knows. Like
Right.
that literally grew up with each other on and off the floor. I'm sure, right? And so it's hard to detach yourself from that. And they're stuck in that mode of trying to develop and trying to win at the same time. We've seen it with Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody. Obviously, Jordan Poole isn't there anymore. So they've tried to extend this sort of run. And it worked for a little bit because they won the championship a couple of years ago, right? But I think that was the limit there. At this point, where is this? I mean, you're 20 and 24. You're behind the Jazz, who have been trying to tank, and even the Jazz are in playing territory. You're behind the Rockets, who are a young and growing team, right? You just 2 more wins than the Grizzlies, who are signing guys on 10-day contracts left and right because they're dealing with so many injuries. And so you got to face the facts. Steph Curry is still amazing, but Klay Thompson, he's a great player, so he'll give you great moments, but he can't be great consistently
No,
anymore.
he's not that guy anymore. No,
He's
he's
not,
not.
right? And so for me, for Golden State, what I've seen from Jonathan Kuminga, it's all about just letting him go, letting him explore what he can do at this next level and build his confidence up because you're not making the playoffs. And
How
it's
about the
crazy to
Lakers and
say that.
LeBron?
They're cooked too, Q.
We know.
No.
Listen, I didn't think they were going to be a good team going into the season. I think again, we sometimes we get caught up of just that one player always thinking he can carry the franchise, carry the franchise. The NBA is different. In the NFL, if you have a great quarterback and some pieces, you know you can go far. In the NBA, it's really hard, to be that one-man band. I mean, we saw this earlier in LeBron's career when he was dragging Drek into the playoffs and the conference finals and the NBA finals. We saw with Jordan before they started to have guys like Pippen take his game to another level and their role players and their, whether it was Paxson or Hodges or Kerr down the road. So I mean, if you're LeBron, you were able to get that title with the Lakers.
You got the bubble title. You did it.
Title's a title. There's, whether it be asterisk or not.
Got the in-season title too.
Well,
hang the banner up.
There you go.
You know what I mean? I mean, look, this is what you sign up for when you sign a LeBron James. You want to win a championship. You got it done. Now, after that, we know with anytime you sign a LeBron James, you're not going to develop any young talent.
Right.
Who are the young development stars coming up the ranks? Don't give me Austin Rivers. He's a nice player, but he's not a star. As much as people try to prop him up to be part of this big three, he's averaging 15 points, but to me, he's not a big three player, right? You're 24 and 25. You're under 500 team. I watched some of the game last night when they played Atlanta. They're giving up easy baskets. They're not hustling back on defense. I don't think they believe in the coach. It's just a bad team. It's a bad basketball team. Lack of awareness, the effort, low energy. LeBron is pushing 40 and running full court and still pinning guys' shots off, and these guys are just jogging back.
Which is a bad look.
It's just, come on, D'Angelo Russell, he has great moments, but at the end of the day, who are you consistently? He's an unreliable player. Torian Prince, Jared Vanderbilt, Cam Reddish. I mean, these names that I'm naming off to are like 8th, 9th guys off a championship roster.
Yeah.
These aren't starting talent guys, but you're relying on these guys. Like, okay, so you make a trade, you get DeJounte Murray. I'm still not, no. Like, because overall, the core of this team, the foundation is shaky, right? The coaching, the strategies, are they even buying into what Darvin Ham is saying anymore? And it looks like they're not because the effort shows. And
well,
LeBron can't save you.
Who's the coach? It's LeBron.
Of course, he's the GM too.
Yeah.
The hour look, it's almost predict. You can almost predict how the season will go for the Lakers. The offseason, we got Gabe Vincent, we got this and that. Oh, Austin Reeves is back. We're ready. This is a legit roster. That was the conversation, right? Like, we're seeing and hearing this. I'm like, I'm sitting back. Okay, talk to me in December and January.
Yeah,
January's here. Hourglass. LeBron tweets out.
Yep.
Last night, he almost went off on his teammates. He got cut off in the end of the locker room. Like, the patience for LeBron's wearing thin. Next week's the trade deadline. Somebody's gone.
Lastly, before I let you get out of here, this is a tough one, man. So I know you already heard about Tony Snell needs to sign with an NBA team by Friday so he can complete his 10th year of service, which would allow him benefits to help his family and two autistic sons.
Yeah.
you know, it's it's hard, man. The NFL, I think it was 3 or 4 years, you get your bennies. You got to make a business decision and do what's right for the franchise, right? Because it's all about X amount of bodies. He's not changing your team, but from a positive PR kind of standpoint,
Mhm.
you can't go wrong if you sign this guy to help him out, right? And his family.
No.
I mean, listen, you're not looking at the stats. You're not looking at the stat sheet. You're looking at something bigger than you. That's a tough spot, man. Like because your heart feels for the guy, right? But again, that's you're trying to
Yeah.
get tenure within the NBA, and you're trying to get those bennies,
It's a human element of it, right? It's bigger than
right?
sports at this point, right? And he has no Friday, right? I mean, you would
Yeah,
think maybe a former club because he's played for a few teams, right? Um, you would think a team. I mean, why can't I mean, we talk about effort. I'm pretty sure Tony Snow will give a better effort than what we've seen for the Lakers. I mean, like, you know, like at this point, he's
played for the
32.
Bulls, right? He played,
He's
bounced around a little bit.
the Bucks, the
Yep,
Pistons.
yep,
You know what I mean? So somebody can figure it out. One of these two-way guys, bring them down. I don't know. There's some way you can manipulate the roster, I'm sure,
yeah.
and figure it out. But that's a tough situation,
It is
and
because listen, that's why I think it was so important. We kind of mocked that in season tournament, but for some of the guys who are on the bench, I think their bonus
mhm.
was $500,000. So
Yeah,
to them,
yeah, yeah.
that's like for
And,
us, it's life changing money. And I can't imagine for a guy like Tony Snell who's taking care of his family and he has two sons that need it. Um,
mhm.
yeah,
we,
you
we,
you would you would you would think a team maybe
I,
steps
I,
up.
I would hope, I saw some comments, talking about, this guy's made X amount of dollars his whole career. You don't know what his life expenses are. Like you see, like
Exactly.
his family situation that comes with certain expenses. Yeah, I'm
Of
sure,
course.
I'm sure of it, right? And so you don't know who they're taking care of.
Yep. Easy to read
Like,
the room from outside.
and he's not a guy who's made max dollars. That money can easily go away quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, my friend. Yeah, you doing the pod? Is the pod out?
It is it we're doing some new things with it, and so
I mean, it
once it's
feels like
fresh
it's
and
like a
ready.
space mission. Like you're like every time we talk, you have to go through the you got to keep
It's
putting
jitters,
the work in.
first day jitters, first day jitters.
Hey, I'm not even going to ask you, are you happy that Sirianni's coming back with the Philadelphia Eagles? You notice I kind of steered clear of your Eagles spitting the bid in the playoffs. So that's fine.
You know,
Yes. Go ahead.
I wasn't prepared to talk Eagles football, but I will
He's
say,
a lame duck, by the way. He is a lame
oh
freaking
no,
duck.
he's coaching for his job this year, literally next year. Because as far as I'm concerned, I never want to get anybody fired, but he did enough to lose his job. The fact that you decided to bring Matt Patricia in, who was never the solution for any NFL team, period. The Lions, the Patriots, we've learned that Matt Patricia is never the answer. And the fact that you hired him to be the play caller on defense, to me, that's
Yeah. And
malpractice.
we can argue semantics if that was a Lurie or Roseman, but I just think going from 10-1 and then dropping 6 out of 7 and
I
not
mean,
even showing up.
Roseman has to do work too because that defense stinks. Linebackers stink. The DBs are cooked. James Bradbury has to go. Quez Watkins has to go. Kenny Gainwell is not, no. There's personnel issues too, but it could be worse. Could be the Patriots, could be the Jets, could be the Cowboys, could be worse.
You really can't take.
I spared your
I
guys. I
was about
spared
to
the
just say
Giants.
you really
I'm not going
can't.
to say the Giants. I'm
You
just going to leave
can't
y'all
because
alone.
listen. I pretty much kicked in. Watts heading into the playoffs, right? I mean, I wanted to put up 50 that day. Johnathan Marshall at John_Marshall 3, our resident hoops insider and expert. Don't forget you can catch him sports reporter anchor at WMUR. How is the weather up there? Have you guys been hit with some snow?
Yeah, there's snow on the grass. The streets are cleared out, but we've gotten snow, honestly, since January hit, we've gotten snow almost every week. December and November were kind of chill, but January we're making up for it. You know what I mean? But
Horrible.
it's not bad though. The streets are clear. I'll just
Well,
say
that's,
that.
hey, that's always a plus.
I can drive. You can drive on the streets.
We will we'll get you back on right before the trade deadline, and then we'll recap
Please
everything
do.
going forward. But always appreciate a couple moments, brother. Thank you.
All right, Q.